to our morning question. Is expulsion the only route? 8 Milnerton High learners faced a disciplinary hearing on multiple counts of assault with intent to do grievous bodily harm. Remember that video emanating from the locker rooms from Milnerton High School last year? The boys are still experiencing the criminal case. They have been appearing in court, but the disciplinary hearing at school has concluded. The school governing body recommending the expulsion of 6 learners. 1 learner received an alternative sanction. 1 outcome is still pending. The recommendation is now with the WCED for final decision. 5 of the 6 recommended for expulsion are grade 12 learners. 1 is in grade 10. But now we ask the question, expulsion as punishment versus education as rehabilitation. Let's talk about the alternatives. I'm joined on the line now by Dr. Charl Davids, a registered counselling psychologist and director at the Centre for Student Counselling. Of course, if we talk about the alternatives to expulsion, people will shout and are shouting on the WhatsApp line, you're being soft on crime. Assault is assault as assault. They must be made examples of. Charl, good morning.
Good morning, Lester. And good morning to all the listeners as well.
What's your thoughts on people saying, but expulsion is justice?
Yes. Lester, expulsion doing what? So we expel these kids, and the ones who can still attend school has to go to another school. Are we not just moving problems from one area to another, as opposed to looking at how because in all this whole saga for me is just a lack of leadership within education, because how is it that, and I've listened to this since October when this video went viral in different radio conversations on different radio stations. And the amount of people on social media who send stuff in to say, but when I was at the school, this thing was already happening. So did the learners act within a culture where there's a culture of bullying at the school? So why are we not holding then the school leaders, whether it's the principal, teachers, governing body, the community, and the education department? We're not talking about their role in all of this, but we want to criminalize what young people did within a culture that's been set up for them already. So there should be alternatives. We can't just say expel them and then stop almost the life of young people.
So you're arguing expulsion punishes the perpetrator, doesn't punish the culture that existed before them.
Absolutely. Because, if you look at a lot of our high schools in this country, and even at some universities, this whole thing of hazing, when your grade 8s come into high school, there's a fine line between hazing and bullying. And has the hazing at all our high schools been stopped? So it means that, and are we looking at if these perpetrators in this case, have they gone through the similar kind of initiation practices and bullying at the school? And most of the time, it is because it reminds me, Lester, when I was working at the Trauma Center for Survivors of Violence and Torture years ago, we did a documentary together with Carte Blanche and Ruda Landman, where we looked at children in prisons for sometimes very violent crimes. And the one thing everyone missed, even in sentencing, is that nobody went to look at the history, the trauma history that the perpetrators went through and now became perpetrators because of that. And so we're not addressing the underlying factors here. We just expelling, we're almost expelling an issue. And did the disciplinary process at the school, was it influenced because of all the media attention on this? Or did they really...
I'm a victim. Why should I as a victim be made to be in the presence of my attacker? They will go through a process. What if I as a victim still has to be in their space? I do not accept their forgiveness, but I still have to be in their presence. What about justice for the victim?
Yeah, but let's say if we take, for example, a restorative justice approach, then it is about where we focus on repairing harm from crime rather than just punishing offenders. And then we emphasize within that process the healing for victims and together with the reintegration for offenders by involving all the affected parties, with victim offenders and the community, the school community, while we're abdicating our kind of responsibility and taking easier routes out, as opposed to saying, can we actually, I mean, I'm not sure what's happening at Milnerton School. Have we included now things within curriculum to look at these kind of things where we focus on harm and needs and not just seeing everything as criminal offenses? We see this, for example, within the addiction space, where there's amazing work in the restorative approach where there's a crime committed because somebody is addicted. But they don't go to prison, because we will see in these young men, if, for example, there might be an outcome on the criminal side of things, that they go to prison. We know our prison system is not rehabilitative. So we're creating, it's a negative cycle and spiral that we're going to, and we're not looking at how do we do things in a different kind of way.
A lot of what gets played out in the public sphere and a video that goes viral is that people become emotionally attached. It means that there's no longer just one victim, there's a collective victim of society. What does justice for society look like? Justice must be done. Justice must also be seen to be done. So if we as a public have been emotionally involved in the story, do you think that we feel entitled that justice must also be done for us?
Absolutely. But also then I will want to say to the same people that goes on social media and now become the judge, jury, and executioner, that what are we doing as a society to decrease the violence that we see all over our communities, in all our schools? But we want to just criticize and do something. And I must admit, on a societal level, on a political level, there's just not the political will to really look at this kind of matter. And that we have to do the hard work to go down and look at where is this coming from. Because we can probably say that for these youngsters who was the perpetrators in this case at Milnerton High, that in their family, their parents were probably very shocked when they saw this video, because that's not the way the child acts at home. But none of our parents know what happens when our child leaves the door. So it's easy to go into judgment and say, yeah, this is the kind of, but what are we doing? And not just talking on social media, but what are our active roles in society to make sure that we address all these issues and become actively involved, and not just want to be finger politics, where we just put things out on social media. It's easy to type things when it doesn't directly affect you.
Maybe I just appreciate a good story, or end of the story. Maybe it's my better angels getting the best of me. But I tend to agree with you in that wouldn't real justice be a rehabilitated group of learners, perpetrators in this case? Wouldn't real justice look like perpetrators and victim eventually, after a process, coming together and says, there's been a request for forgiveness, there may not be immediate acceptance, but there's a consideration, there is a transformative process in which the school undertakes, and at the end of a process we say, we atone for our mistakes and our transgressions, we accept the consequences. Because I think when people are saying, when they no expulsion, they're thinking no consequences. Yeah, there must be consequences, of course. What could their consequences be? We can use our imagination. Yeah, but am I just trying to look at maybe a two of a airy story and saying that hopefully this ends in a proper feel-good narrative, that at the end that there is atonement, that there is a forgiveness, and that there is learning here, particularly when it still comes to what these people are, still children, Charl?
Cannot agree with you more. And this is exactly my point, is that We so easily just go to say, punish them, send them to prison, they must serial because it's been assault and so on. I get all of that, and I'm not saying there mustn't be consequences for this because they did something wrong. Absolutely right. But how we deal with it, it could have a different outcome because we must still build a generation where, because or are we now basically send them off to prison and they come out bigger criminals because of the experiences in them. I mean, I've seen a lot of times in our Bosasa facilities when I worked in some of those spaces where you see our young people that sometimes committed petty crimes, and that's mini prisons, and the almost the kind of somebody from a small rural area that stole something in the shop is now sent to Bosasa. But almost the kind of gang culture that's created within that spaces, even if it's not meant to be. And even in that spaces, they have childcare youth workers and social workers on a daily basis in that space. But it still creates that kind of alternative. And that's why I'm saying we should really look at a different restorative approach, a transformative approach. And in this way, that's why I'm saying we need strong leadership in our education systems.
Charl, really appreciate your time. Charl Davids is a counselling psychologist, director of the Center for Student Counselling at Stellenbosch University.